All right, we got rugged by the Sommelier account, internet being just getting disconnected, and so we're going to take this again from the top. Um, Good to have you all here, and that's what we're doing. So I'm gonna kick things off from where we started, where we left off. Well, from the beginning. Okay, just to make this a sane recording for everybody who listens to this later. We were on a previous Twitter space for about a minute, and then the Twitter space unexpectedly ended, and here we are yet again. So I'm Zucky. I'm a co-founder of Sommelier. I work on a lot of different blockchain projects. Sommelier is really special to me, though. I view Sommelier as I view 2020 as like this really important moment in blockchain history, where the dream of DeFi that many people had been thinking about since 2014, 2015 suddenly came to life, where hundreds of thousands, millions of people were starting to interact with on-chain protocols, using financial products. It was something that was very exciting to see become a reality. But I think there's a missing piece to DeFi. There's a missing piece that we have to have in order to ensure that the dream of DeFi, which is that anyone is able to fulfill any role in the financial system, that there aren't specialized institutions that can only do market making, that can only do lending. In order to do that, we have to have this piece of technology, and I think Sommelier is that missing piece of infrastructure to maintain the soul of DeFi. So I'm going to just hand it over to Christy, who's I've been working with for 5 years, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the history of.
Thank you, Zaki. I'm Christy, also a co-founder of Sommelier. And over the last 5 years, I have worked on a number of blockchain projects, including helping to build the iColution validator business for the Cosmos ecosystem. And ever since Cosmos shipped its IBC, the inter-blockchain communication protocol, we have seen fast growth of decentralized finance applications being built. However, one of the key challenges of the decentralized finance space that we have observed is its complexity. And this, in fact, is a major barrier for people to get involved. And that is what we aim to solve with Sommelier. In a few words, our goal is to democratize that space and automate DeFi investments. We incubated Sommelier back in 2021 when iColution partnered up with Althea. Althea is a blockchain company that built the Gravity Bridge, connecting Cosmos blockchain to Ethereum, and that enables Sommelier to leverage both the strength of Cosmos and Ethereum DeFi.
All right. So the core of what Sommelier is enabling is we are enabling sort of the decentralized governance of dynamic DeFi. So validators, which I spent all of 2018 sort of building the validator community with Jack, and building Icclusion as a validator company for several years. The role of validators is in Sommelier is really special. They play this important governance role where they're able to actually replace seller strategists, and ensure that there is this dynamism that goes beyond what is possible in just a conventional multi-sig that manages so many DeFi projects. So when the Sommelier community and SOM holders decide what strategies to launch, they decide who the validator set is. The validator set operates the platform. We have the ability to crowdsource validated, back-tested strategies through the governance process from the community. And this really enables you to have off-chain computation, which can be anything from a strategist sitting at a keyboard and pushing buttons, to machine learning models and other more sophisticated technologies that you'll hear about as we keep going.
Great, and I would add that when we look at the evolution of DeFi space, the launch of Solars is a significant milestone. And moreover, the problems that Sommelier addresses become even more critical following recent bankruptcies of notable centralized finance players such as Celsius. And we have seen that if you have your funds in a centralized, black box, you might not get your money back. So the question really becomes, how can we make holding a position in DeFi retail friendly without introducing a custodian that can run away with your money or expose you to risk without the user's consent? And to begin with, of course, Sommelier never has custody over your assets. Your assets are deployed directly to the DeFi products where the strategy operates. And this kind of a trustless setup also means that users don't need to depend on Sommelier when they are ready to remove their assets. And that takes us back to our first product, the Aave Seller. Sun, I'll pass it on to you to talk more about the Aave Seller.
Thanks, Christy. Hi, everyone. I'm Sun. I'm head of research at SOM, and I've been doing strategy development here. So let me talk a little bit about this first seller that we're launching. So the name kind of gives away what it is. It's called the Aave Stablecoin Seller. The seller is live, so feel free to go to the app and try it out. But let me kind of start by describing what our goals were with this first seller, because we get this question a lot, like why Aave, why stablecoins? So Sommelier is this remarkably complex distributed system. And so for this launch, we really wanted to, one of our key priorities was actually minimizing risk, right? And so safety is a key priority. And there's risk, there's all types of risk. There's inherent risk in strategies, right? Like there's market risk. So this is the answer to the question why stablecoins and why Aave. Really, we wanted to start with something that is very unlikely to lose users' monies. But that being said, that wasn't our only priority. The next priority was to demonstrate the capabilities of this, again, remarkably complex distributed system. And in particular, to show that you can really do things on SOM that you can't do elsewhere, and particularly that you can't do in what's common in vault architectures these days. So that being said, what exactly is this Aave strategy and what does it do? It's the Aave strategy and Aave seller is solving a very simple problem, which is that you have Aave, you have a bunch of stable coins that you can lend, and they have varying interest rates. So we started this investigation by actually looking at those interest rates over time, and we found that they're actually quite volatile. And they're volatile enough that at a first glance, if you go on Aave and you're like, oh, it looks like DAI has the best interest rate, it isn't necessarily the case that DAI is going to, maximize your yield, even if it has the best interest rate currently. So this Aave seller essentially leverages off-chain machine learning models, which are doing things like time series forecasting, ingesting alternative sources of data, and it's using this data to model which stablecoin is going to give users the best yield. And so the seller, which is a smart contract living on Ethereum, automatically rebalances to that highest performing stablecoin. And so this we think that this strategy has solved several of our goals here. One being it's very safe. It's only stablecoin lending. It's a smart contract, so you can actually see transparently what capabilities it has, and it can only rebalance into stablecoins on Aave. All of that is coded within the contract. The next criteria is this strategy doing something that can't be done before? And the answer is yes. Now, the stakes here aren't life and death, of course, but the reality is that it's very unlikely that you can model this problem and optimize it purely on chain in a way that a vault would, right? Like off chain computation is clearly advantageous in this case. And a third component, which is more subtle about this Aave stablecoin seller, and which speaks more to another goal of SOM, which is to be decentralized, is that this seller is being operated by an external strategy provider, the first external strategy provider, but hopefully the first of many.
Thank you, Sun. So Sun is the CEO also of a company called Seven Seas. And Seven Seas provides non-custodial DeFi investment strategies. They are part of the Sommelier DAO. And Aave stablecoin is their first seller on Sommelier, but most definitely it's not the last. And we're very excited for what's coming next. However, I'd also like to encourage other independent teams who might be listening to build your own sellers. We are creating a roadmap to decentralization, and Sommelier wants to bring the highest number of sellers and strategies onto our platform. And to make this easier, Sommelier community gives a lot of support that every team can benefit from. For example, seed funding is available through the protocol and community funds. We also provide help with writing smart contracts, backtesting your strategy to see how the strategy would play out using historical data. And even though we cannot guarantee that your strategy gets approved, we can help you do the preparation to create successful sellers. But at the end of the day, of course, being a decentralized platform, the Sommelier decentralized validator set has a final say in what strategies go live. And Stephanie can talk more about that.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm head of operations at SOM, and I'm just going to be talking a little bit more about like the decentralization here. So, as Christy said, the community decides like via proposals what sellers to launch. And then, as Zaki said before, SOM's decentralized validator set operates the platform based on consensus for settlement, passing strategy instructions to sellers as the off-chain computation modules send in updates. So let me try to break this down for the life cycle of a seller. So first, a seller starts with an idea for a profitable strategy. This idea is coded into a smart contract and submitted to governance for approval. This is like the first stage of decentralization here. The governance will aim to ensure that the seller can provide value to both seller investors as well as the SOM token holders. If the seller is accepted by the governance, a strategy provider needs to be chosen to operate the seller. The strategy provider is selected by the SOM validator set. This is the second stage of decentralization. Finally, any requested updates to a seller must pass through governance. The validators are free to revoke access from the current strategy provider in case of malicious behavior or poor performance in the seller. This is the final stage of decentralization. So SOM has a system of checks and balances across the decentralization that achieves the high performance alongside. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Zaki to talk a little bit about the Cosmos SDK.
Yeah. So one of the reasons, Sommelier is a blockchain built with the Cosmos SDK. But as you'll notice, like end users of sellers actually don't really ever have to interact with the Cosmos SDK chain. So why do we have this Cosmos SDK chain there? What we really want is the Cosmos SDK chain to operate as like sort of the centralized coordination place between all of these different strategy providers and validators. Really able to provide this this user experience that was only previously possible on a centralized platform, and to do it in a decentralized way. And we envision that there is a future in which sellers are operating not just on Ethereum, but eventually all of the EVM chains, all of the chains connected to IBC and beyond. We think that there is this vast world that could be built on top of the Sommelier platform, and we're really excited to move it forward. And I'm going to throw it over to Sam.
Hey guys, my name is Sam. I'm head of product and biz dev at Sommelier. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of building on what Zaki and Christy have been talking about, the decentralization. One of the key parts of decentralization is to kind of have these independent teams that Sun is running one of those independent teams. Many such teams are already in our pipeline and we're working with them, right? So the idea is to what kind of teams can join. So the ultimate goal is to have every single component of the Sommelier platform to be decentralized, which means the quantitative teams that build the strategies, or the seller teams, or the contract teams, or even the app teams. Either all of these can be decentralized, and they can all contribute to the platform in general. But I'm going to specifically focus on the quantitative teams that one of which is run by Sun. We have been talking to a lot of the quantitative traditional hedge fund teams that happen to have risk management solutions available for traditional finance. Up until now, a lot of those models that they have invested tens of decades of time in order to kind of hone into the right customer, right market that they have built, they didn't have a place to directly point it towards DeFi. a lot of them did go to centralized exchanges, but DeFi, this is the sellers provides a vehicle for a lot of these traditional finance people to actually use their risk models and apply it to the decentralized finances. In fact, as Christy was mentioning, we can help with the data sets, we can help with building the smart contracts, and that's exactly what we're doing with a lot of the biz dev team, a lot of the hedge fund teams that are coming up online with us. Other than that, I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of point out was you can reach out to me, Sam, Osaki, or any of the co-founders on the team, or directly messages on the Sommelier community chat, and get started, and we can get you guys going with any of the aspects of the protocol in general. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Osaki.
Yeah. Okay, so what is there already? Right now, we have with the upgrades that have happened over the last few weeks, all the pieces that are live, we can support arbitrary DeFi strategies on Ethereum. But there are a couple of key pieces that are missing. One is, while right now the Aave seller is collecting fees from users and sending those fees back to the Som chain to eventually become part of the staking rewards for Som stakers and Som validators. There right now isn't currently a distribution mechanism, because what we want to do is we want to take all of these different fees that we're going to get in all kinds of different tokens that are going to come through on a variety of different chains, and we want to all convert them into Som. And so we have to build an auction module to take the fees that are being collected from running the Som token and an auction all these different fees: DAI, USDC, ETH, WBTC. Like, you imagine this whole world of tokens, right? That will be contributed as fees to Sommelier. They're going to be auctioned for Som, and then that Som is going to be distributed to the stakers and the validators. Part of the sort of, the ambition of Sommelier, right, is to build a Cosmos chain that is truly powered by fees and the value it's creating for users, and not by inflationary rewards. So that's a big part of the faith that our validators and stakers of Som are putting in, that this will become real. The other thing is that we do have a massive pull request on going multi-chain, multi-EVM. So that would open up Arbitrum and Avalanche as platforms where we could run strategies and more. And so those are probably the top two things. Sen, you want to talk about some of the strategies that that 7Cs are thinking about?
Yeah, for sure. So, the first thing is that, like I mentioned earlier, right? Like, the Aave seller is fairly limited in its ambition, and so I'm really excited about the next sellers that we're developing. Specifically on Ethereum, we have what I think are a couple bangers coming out. And I won't say too much now, but essentially what we're calling these the ETH Maximizer and STETH Maximizer. And we have another stablecoin seller that we're thinking about called the Ultimate Stablecoin Seller. So that's on the ETH mainnet side. But to follow up on what Zaki talked about with the multi-chain, this is something I'm really excited about for Som, because having access to chains beyond just ETH L1 it opens up this huge design space, both on the smart contract side and the strategy side. So, basically, when ETH is pretty expensive, so that kind of limits the range of strategies. But when you have access to, a cheaper network, you can do a lot more interesting things, like actively manage LP positions. So I'm really excited about the strategies that are to come, both from 7Cs and from other strategy providers.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think just to kind of build on that aspect as well, in terms of the other pipeline other than the 7Cs, obviously we're decentralized on the front where other providers are excited, and for the first time, they're able to access a lot of bring their lot of know-how on machine learning and modeling to DeFi. And to that front, we already have a couple of the partners that we're bringing very shortly to the market in general around portfolio management seller, as well as a trading bot seller that that will allow you to be able to, it kind of expands in a lot of ways the flexibility of the platform, at the same time ability to create a marketplace of sellers in general. So I think with that, I'm going to kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about the product and user experience in general. The user experience in DeFi. So my background has been traditional technology in general, and user experience has been very critical for many years on that front in general. But I've always noticed that the DeFi stuff was not as let's say very user friendly. So there was very much a huge focus for the last 6 months in trying to bring something to market, which, especially given how complex the architecture is, and how we are reaching over multiple chains eventually, and be able to hide all of that complexity into creating a seamless experience for the user. So when you go and try the app today, there is a lot of months of work by a lot of important people, and a lot of cool people working on it with a lot of passion, and we're trying to bring a simplicity to the user experience and the flow across the entire DeFi. And if you extrapolate the vision of what the product might look like in, let's say, 2 years from now, I think it's an important concept to kind of think about that the marketplace of these strategies would be of different varietals produced by different entities in general, and all of that. Some of them would be stable coins, some of them would be high beta, and some of them would be simply trading. And a lot of these marketplaces would advertise and have different returns. And so a couple of years from now, when you have enough strategies in place on the SOM marketplace, or the platform in general, you as a user can come in and technically just say, I have $10,000, and this is my risk profile, and this is what my targets are, and the system automatically finds the best strategies for you to be able to allocate them automatically, right? And I think later on, to enable this vision, Kevin is going to talk a little bit about the seller architecture innovation that we're going to be talking in detail about. But we're very excited about trying to bring not only innovation on incredible distributed architecture, but at the same time on the user experience side as well. And hopefully we'll kind of get over the hump of DeFi being called not so great on the user experience side as well. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Sun to talk a little bit more about the dynamic strategies that we are creating at Sun.
Yeah, so when people ask like what SOM is, it's funny. Like I always hesitate because there are so many ways to answer this question, and specifically, there's like two broad types of users of SOM. So one are like seller investors, right? These are people looking for yields. They come to SOM and they can find a variety of products, right? Risk managed strategies. But a different kind of user is actually the strategy provider. So what SOM is providing to strategy providers is a decentralized execution platform, right? So you have some kind of IP, you have some strategies and machine learning models off chain, and you want to offer these as a product and as a service to users in DeFi. But how do you do that in a decentralized way? Well, I'm quoting Zaki here. Zaki said this once, and it's stuck with me since. SOM is like this magical black box that takes strategies and decentralizes them. So we've talked about the dynamic nature of SOM strategies, how it allows off-chain computation. But one like interesting point here is that by separating the execution from the strategy off-chain strategy engine, you actually open up roadways to people who otherwise wouldn't know how to engage with DeFi to come in, right? So people who have interesting IP and don't necessarily want to share that on chain, but still want to run decentralized strategies, people that don't necessarily know how to engage with DeFi or write smart contracts. SOM is actually providing value to this segment of users as well. And so that's just an interesting point, that it's not just expanding the capabilities of strategists, but it actually opens up the door for new strategists to come in to DeFi and offer these kind of products. And actually, so on this point, Sam, it'd be interesting for you to talk about. You have this vision that you've talked about before a couple times. You'll mention it, like once every couple of weeks, of multiple sellers a bunch of different sellers, and then there's a meta seller, right, which kind of automatically targets a risk profile. You kind of touched on it, but it'd be cool to share that, your vision on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the concept that we're talking about, and Zaki and I have been chatting, and obviously everyone on the team has been listening to me about it, was the strategy Legos concept, right? Like, so think about, so we obviously had the money Legos, and now if we think as strategies as that being the next building block, where you can have independent users or independent strategists come in and be able to use these sellers to create a new strategy, which is so you can pick, like, let's say, the one of the strategies that Sun was talking about, which is about the ultimate stablecoin seller. So now a new strategist comes in and he wants to allocate 20% of his money into the best performing stablecoin. He can allocate that money, and then rest of the money can be towards other stuff, right? So it kind of creates this possibility of building sellers on using sellers as building blocks for other sellers. And with that, I'm gonna pass it back to Christy to kind of quickly guide us to what's next on the security front.
Great. Thank you, Sun, and thank you, Sam. Last but not least, security. Kevin, maybe you can expand more on our unique approach towards ensuring highest security of user funds.
Kevin,
can you hear me?
yes.
Sorry, having some microphone issues. Yep, great. Yeah, so just as a little bit of a way of background, my name's Kevin. I lead kind of the decentralized smart contract development over at Sommelier. Like Christy mentioned earlier, support for writing your own strategies and smart contracts in the future. You may end up talking to me. And this first seller, one, really important, it manages user funds. And two, as Sun has mentioned, it's being directed by a validator set talking over our bridge, and there are different kind of authority models in this form of contract as opposed to other sorts of on-chain vaults. So we were lucky on the Ethereum side to work with some really strong auditors. We worked with Macro and FIEO. Can't speak highly enough about them. We went through a multi-stage audit process, and as kind of one of the kind of outputs and feedback we got as part of that process, we've ended up kind of redesigning the seller architecture. I want to shout out Brian Lee in the audience, who actually wrote the smart contract for the first seller. This is one of his babies. And we basically have designed for the future a seller that can support modularity, multiple different positions, multiple different strategies, and eventually kind of sellers of sellers. So, if you think about all the things that Sun mentioned in terms of strategy development and how to make those available on the EVM, the way we do that, kind of the user experience, like front end for that, is everything that the smart contracts team is working on for EVM chains. And we're really excited to kind of show that off. Our audits are public, and anything that you'd like to know, you can feel free to reach out to us on Discord. We're working on a bug bounty program, and we feel really good about what we've come out with.
I want to just jump in here and emphasize something, which is that I think at least from my perspective, the smart contract challenge of sellers turned out to be like really interesting and really complicated. And so, yeah, double thanks to Kevin, Brian, and we got Crispy Mangoes. I don't know if he's in the chat, but it's been like invaluable to have such a strong smart contract team, because there really are novelties and really interesting challenges on the smart contract side here.
Yeah, there are so many challenges on trying to sort of make this sort of asynchronous cross-chain communication secure. There are questions around MEV, and just like an incredible amount of work that has gone in over the last 6 or 7 months to really build now a foundation which we think we can use for many different sellers, and are going to enable like sort of the success criteria for Som is basically the largest marketplace for strategies in the world. That's basically how we will know that Som has worked, and I think we've taken a really important step towards that. So like I would just like second the enormous gratitude to our Solidity contract team, because I am not the greatest Solidity developer, and we could not have done this without them. All right, like one sort of last thing that I just want to like re-emphasize. One of the things that we wanted to make sure was the case about Sommelier is that really you are the sort of core custody of the assets lives on Ethereum. You are not transferring your assets to control of a validator set who can just do any arbitrary thing. The smart contract limits what positions they can be taken. And the smart contracts on Ethereum are what manage your liquidity and give you the ability to enter and exit your funds. So, this is just like a real approach to just making sure that we are not sort of taking any security away from the phenomenal security that is built on all of these battle-tested DeFi protocols on top of Ethereum as we sort of build this out. Cool. And that sort of brings us towards the end. We have a few minutes for questions. If anybody wants to put their hand up, we can bring them up. I'm in Paris for ETC. It's been absolutely insane. It's like so busy. But ETC has been really good. There's a lot of Cosmos content. Nebular is tomorrow. I'm going to be speaking about IST. So just lots going on. Cool. All right. I think we are ready to go, especially for me. It's been an incredibly long day and everybody's been working really hard. Enjoy the first seller and go put some liquidity in. There is a staking contract on Ethereum where you can earn some rewards. It's all there waiting for you. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.